You're listening to the Touch 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and on today's episode, we're going to be breaking down NXT Takeover War Games 2019, which takes place from the All-State Arena in Rosemont, Illinois on Saturday night, November 23rd, as well as breaking down WWE Survivor Series, where for the first time in its illustrious history, we have the NXT brand versus Raw versus SmackDown. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. Hey guys, how's everybody doing tonight? I hope you're enjoying whatever you're doing in the day. Hope you're having a productive day and you're ready to get this podcast rolling because we got so much stuff to cover. It's going to be one of the biggest episodes we've ever had in the history of this podcast, this 52 episode history, or 53, I think. I think this is number 53, and we ain't stopping anytime soon. I was planning on getting a guest on here today, but there was no plans set in stone or anything like that, so it's just going to go as we have to go. It's going to be just me for this big breakdown, and I'm excited because I got a lot of things I want to cover. Obviously, we've got a couple surprises that I believe are going to take place this weekend. We'll get into that a little bit later. But first off, let's start off with NXT from this week. You know, like I said, I haven't really covered wrestling too much on the podcast. It's been kind of slow in the world of wrestling up until, Survivor Series. I think the build to Survivor Series has just been one of the best builds to this event that we've had in recent years. We've always had the Raw versus SmackDown brand on Survivor Series, brand versus brand ever since I believe it started in 2016. Or you know what? I think it was 2017 Survivor Series where they really did I'm right. It is 2016 because they started the shakeup, I believe, in July of 2016, and then that Survivor Series is when they did the Raw versus SmackDown. But this is going to be the first year where they introduced the NXT brand to Survivor Series, and it's going to be taking place at the All-State Arena, Chicago, Illinois. I know a couple of my buddies are going to be there. I wish I was going to be in attendance for both shows, but it just didn't pan out that way. This is the first NXT takeover in Chicago that I'll be missing, and I'm pretty sad considering this is probably the best takeover event we've had, or best NXT takeover and best Chicago wrestling weekend we've ever had. I think from top to bottom, the weekend's just going to be an amazing event for wrestling fans. I think this weekend is going to really revive people's love for the sport of professional wrestling. And I know people are going to say, oh, it's not a sport. Yeah, okay, cool, whatever, dude. But I'm pretty sure if you were saying that, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. And if you are listening, I hope I can bring you guys in for the long ride. It's probably going to be a 3-part episode. But yeah, we've got a lot to cover. Let's start out with NXT from this past week on Wednesday. A really, really solid show. Probably one of the best shows NXT has had since it's made its move to the USA Network. And it started off with a bang. Becky Lynch coming out, declaring that I'm going to invade you guys just like you've been invading our brand, and I'm the man, and nobody's going to get me out of this ring unless they make me get out. And just when you think maybe it's going to be Shayna or somebody else, Rhea Ripley's music hits and she comes out to the ring, and Ripley versus Becky Lynch is the first match of the night. It's just an amazing match, although it did end via disqualification with the different teams getting involved for Survivor Series, and Raw and SmackDown and NXT, all the teams just coming out and attacking one another to build up to this Sunday's event, and also to build up to War Games a little bit. They have to build up to 2 huge shows, and them being involved in Survivor Series this year is really just pushing the NXT brand to its limits, because we don't really know what its limits are, but just pushing it further than it's ever been pushed before for a WWE main roster show. Obviously people from NXT have showed up at like the Royal Rumble and some Battle Royals and stuff like that, but usually that's for a call-up. This is the first time where they're using the NXT brand to push it as the NXT brand. It's not as a developmental brand, which we knew it wasn't developmental anyway. I know that's what they call it, but it's not. NXT is its own thing. And they're really pushing the envelope like, hey, we're here to stay and we're here to kick your ass. And I'm ready to take you guys over. And Triple H as the leader of NXT against Vince McMahon's product of Raw and SmackDown, just to show you like, hey, we're here to take over. We're not here to take part. A little shout out to Conor McGregor there. I know he's a UFC fighter, but if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. Yeah, so obviously Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch had a great match. It ended in a no contest, via disqualification. I wish they would have pushed, a little bit more, but they're definitely going to have a feud down the line. I guarantee it. Rhea Ripley, probably my favorite women's talent on NXT currently, and in all of NXT and NXT UK. I just think Rhea Ripley, she brings such a different look to the women's division. She's a beast. She's huge. She's jacked, and she's just a freaking beast. I love Rhea Ripley. I think she can do so much for the women's division when she eventually makes her move up to Raw and SmackDown. And I just think she's probably one of the best women they have in the entire WWE right now. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to think what I'm saying is true, but I just think she is. And I think you're going to see that this upcoming weekend, just how good she really is. Another thing that happened on the thing we had on NXT was we had Matt Riddle versus Ricochet in like a 2-minute. It was like a 4-minute match. It ended in a no contest again with some interference from Raw and SmackDown guys. But this match was great. They just went balls to the wall for the first 5 minutes. There was a point where I believe Ricochet did like that kick backflip off Riddle's chest, and Riddle caught him in I believe he caught him with a knee or something like that. And it was just great. I'm not really going to go too deep into it because it was such a quick match. But for what it set out to accomplish, it gets you interested in Riddle versus Ricochet. It gets you interested in Matt Riddle, and it just did exactly what I believe it was supposed to do. And the biggest match, or I believe the best match on the show, the Revival versus the Undisputed Era. Such an amazing tag team match. Without a doubt, one of the best tag team matches we've ever seen in WWE. When you put the Revival versus the Undisputed Era up against each other, the Revival were one of the best teams in their era of NXT, starting in 2015, 2016, and the Undisputed Era have become the lead faction and the best thing happening to the NXT brand currently. The Undisputed Era is amazing. Fish and O'Reilly work so well as a team together. Obviously, worked as a tag team on the independent scene as Team Red Dragon, but they just really know how to work a good match. And the Revival and their style just mixed it completely well. There was a mixture of fast-paced wrestling. There was a point in the beginning of the match where the Revival went for a clothesline and a double clothesline, and Fish and O'Reilly ducked it. Then Fish and O'Reilly threw double roundhouse kicks to the head. The Revival ducked it, and then they went back and had a little stalemate. There was just some really good tag team wrestling in this match. The suplex to the frog splash from Dash and Dawson, being able to cut off the ring, and the Undisputed Era cutting off the ring as well, and working the limbs. The Undisputed Era, their best asset as a team is obviously the teamwork that they put together as a tag team. They know where everybody is at all times, and they also know how to work the limbs very well. They're very good at working the legs and working the arms and breaking down an opponent to make a slow, methodical style and then pick it up as the match keeps going. And there was more of the same in this one. There was a point where I don't remember exactly who was in the ring at the current point, but I want to say it was Scott Dawson and Bobby Fish, and then Kyle O'Reilly came in and tried to break up the tag team, and he ended up getting caught into a shattered machine while Kyle O'Reilly went to the outside of the ring. So Bobby Fish got caught in the shattered machine. He caught them in the shattered machine, boom, by Dash and Dawson, went for the pin, but even though O'Reilly went out to the outside of the ring, he was able to grab the foot of Scott Dawson and pull him off of the cover. Like I said, it was just poetry in motion for a tag team match, and the Undisputed Era ended up getting the win after, I want to say, Dash Wilder got thrown over the turnbuckle out to the outside of the ring, and then Red Dragon, I guess you could call them that because that was their old team, but Fish and O'Reilly ended up catching Scott Dawson with I believe it was the elevated roundhouse kick to brainbuster combination and getting the 1-2-3. Just an amazing match. Obviously, the Undisputed Era, they have been booked so well in NXT. There's never really been a moment where they've looked weak, even if in them losing the championship or not getting the world title for so long. They were always the top of the show. They were always the top of the bill. And the fact that they still feel refreshing after how long they've been together as a faction, just shows how good Fish, O'Reilly, Strong, and Cole work together. And I don't know if they're going to break up the team. Every team eventually gets broken up in some way. But I don't know if I see the Undisputed Era ever getting broken up. I mean, I could see Cole fizzling out as the leader, and then you put Strong, Fish, and O'Reilly together in like a triple, like a trio, and then Cole can go on to the main roster and do his thing against guys like Seth Rollins, Daniel Bryan. If Cena decides to come back, I think Cena versus Adam Cole would be a good match to do. There's just so much that the Undisputed Era can do as a tag team, and I think they're just so red hot right now. And they've really built the NXT brand to be what it's become. The fact of this faction, it reminds me of, like, I don't want to say Nexus 2.0 because they're so much better than the Nexus was, but I get that type of feeling that, like, this is the Nexus of the new generation, and they're here to take over. And you could see them when Adam Cole came onto the main roster, he had a match against Seth Rollins, which ended in a DQ, and then he had that victory over Daniel Bryan on SmackDown in the main event. And it just shows that they have a lot of things, a lot of hope, and a lot of things riding on Adam Cole. And I believe he's going to be a world champion on the main roster. I'm going to say in the next year. I think they're really grooming him to get up to the main roster. I think that this NXT invasion angle for Raw and SmackDown and NXT leading into Survivor Series really helped to put the NXT brand on the map a little bit more than it already has been, and it really showcased the Undisputed Era as a formidable force in the world of professional wrestling and in the world of WWE. And that's just how it is, and I can't wait for this weekend. Another thing that happened on NXT was the main event, Adam Cole versus Dominik Dijakovic for the War Games advantage. Whoever won this match was going to have the advantage leading into NXT War Games. And Adam Cole ended up picking up the victory. I did not finish watching the match, but I did see the results. But from what I saw, man, Dijakovic is such a freak in nature. And putting him up against Adam Cole, who can put on a good match with just about anybody, was amazing. And Adam Cole getting the advantage for War Games. Now Undisputed Era has the advantage. I don't know who's going to win at War Games. Obviously, we're going to break that down in a little bit. I got a little bit of a hunch as to what's going to happen. But I think that the Undisputed Era having the advantage was the right way to go in this match. I think they're already the top dogs in NXT. They're the top dogs. They're the hunters. They're never the prey. They're always the hunters, never the hunted. And I think them having the advantage and having the other team have to scratch and claw to beat them is going to be what makes this War Game so special. But let's break down. Let's move into NXT Takeover War Games. I think it's time to go, so let's go. So what we're going to start out with for the card, obviously, we'll talk about the card first. We've got Pete Dunne versus Killian Dane versus Damien Priest in a number one contenders match, and the winner of this match will be facing Adam Cole for the NXT Championship the following night at WWE Survivor Series. Then you've got Matt Riddle versus the newly minted heel, the straight shooter, Finn Balor in NXT. Then we've got the women's War Game match, which consists of a team captained by Rhea Ripley with teammates of Ripley, Candice LeRae, Tegan Nox, and Mia Yim versus the team captained by Shayna Baszler. It's Baszler, Shirai, Bianca Belair, and the NXT UK Women's Champion, Kay Lee Ray. And then the men's War Game match. You have the Undisputed Era, Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, Bobby Fish, and Kyle O'Reilly versus the team of Tommaso Ciampa, Keith Lee, Dominik Dijakovic, and a mystery partner, which I got a hunch as to who it could be. I've heard a few things as to who the team member could be, and there's one that for the storyline, it makes complete sense, but for me and for the NXT brand, I just don't see him as a good choice for this team member. And if you've been keeping up with rumors and everything like that, you know exactly who I'm talking about. But we'll break that down as we get closer. Let's start it out with this triple threat match. Pete Dunne versus Killian Dane versus Damien Priest for the number one contender to the NXT Championship, who will battle Adam Cole the following night at Survivor Series for the NXT Championship. This is going to be a great match. You know, Killian, Dane, and Damien Priest, I feel like they're going to build into a feud of their own. And then Priest and Pete Dunne have had multiple matches on NXT. And Damien Priest won the first match. And then Pete Dunne won the second match where he hit him with a low blow, I believe. And then he snapped his fingers and hit him with the bitter end. And to be honest, I don't think this match is going to be like that great of a triple threat match. Pete Dunne, amazing worker, one of my favorite wrestlers in WWE currently. Killian Dane is good as by himself, good for a big man, can really move and can use some good power moves to build up the excitement in the match. And Damien Priest, fantastic performer. I didn't really know much of him before he came to NXT. I know he was formerly known as Punishment Martinez, but he's really shown me how good he is. And he's such a big guy, and he's got a really, I don't want to say a martial arts based style, but it really is. He's kind of like the new breed of like an MMA professional wrestler. He's got his own twist to it, obviously, with the Archer of Infamy gimmick, where he kind of reminds me, I know this is going to sound kind of dumb, but he kind of reminds me of like a mixture between like the Crow and like a biker gang. I don't know if you know where I'm going with that, but he's got his own thing of being like a rock star, but he's got that I'm just going to kick your ass and you're not going to be able to do anything about it kind of thing. And I think Damien Priest is going to go very far in NXT. But when it comes to the winner of this match, when I first looked at it, I had Damien Priest winning. I just think, okay, you know, Priest can face Cole and lose and still look kind of decent. But then I was like, you know what? I don't think they want Damien Priest to lose his NXT title match, and I don't think they want to give him the title match just yet. I don't think he's there yet in terms of facing Cole for the NXT title. Killian Dane, I think he's just inserted in this match to eventually break off and have a feud with Damien Priest down the line. So my pick for this match is going to be the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne to get the victory here. And then we're going to get Dunne versus Adam Cole for the NXT Championship at Survivor Series. That's how I think this is going to play out. And I think it's the right call. I think Dunne and Cole, they actually have had a match on NXT. I don't know if you remember this at one of the tapings. And the match ended in a disqualification. It never finished. And we never got a rematch. I don't believe we ever got a rematch. We might have. I could be completely wrong. But I know they had a match and it ended via DQ. I think Ricochet might have got involved in the Undisputed Era back when they were doing like the whole build up to, I believe it might have been the previous War Games, where it was the Undisputed Era versus Ricochet, Pete Dunne, and a couple other guys in there. But I just think that Dunne and Cole, it's destined to happen. And I think that's exactly what we're going to get at Survivor Series. So my pick for this match is going to be Pete Dunne to get the victory and challenge Adam Cole for the NXT Championship on Sunday night. And up next, we've got Matt Riddle, the original bro, versus the straight shooter, Finn Balor. This is going to be a great match. This might be match of the night, or match of the entire weekend, to be honest. Matt Riddle is such a breath of fresh air to the world of WWE. Obviously, you've seen some of his stuff on the independents, and we know the guy can go. Former mixed martial artist, pro fighter in the UFC, had a good record, I'm pretty sure, and then ended up leaving the UFC due to some disagreements with Dana White and then moving into the world of professional wrestling. Finn Balor has really been able to reinvent himself and be that Prince Devitt type of character that we've wanted to see for so long in WWE, but haven't got it because they never wanted to push the envelope with a full heel Balor. But they're doing it now, baby. And Finn Balor is such an amazing competitor as a heel. I think he does so well in this gimmick. Obviously, he's done it before, like I said, leading the Bullet Club in New Japan Pro Wrestling back in the day. But this is just such a breath of fresh air, and it's really giving Balor a chance to shine and to eventually get to the top of the NXT brand. This is a hard match. This isn't really a hard match to predict. I predict Finn Balor to get the win here. I think they're going to eventually build up to Balor challenging for the NXT Championship and most likely winning it, and then he'll lose it and probably make his transition back to the main roster maybe in the middle of 2020. I think he's going to have a little bit of a stint in NXT and stay there for a little while and then, build himself back up again to be just as special as he was when he first debuted in 2016 on Raw. I could honestly see them moving him back to Raw when he comes back up to the main roster. And you know what? I was going to say I don't think that's a good idea. But to be honest, I think it is. I think with the Raw roster you have now, that building Balor back up in NXT as a heel and then moving him to the main roster, I think putting him back on Monday Night Raw is the best way to go, because he really hasn't done much on SmackDown since he got moved in the shakeup. And Matt Riddle, he really shouldn't lose this match, just because I feel like they've been building Matt Riddle slowly over time, and just to be this badass, carefree, I look like I'm not that serious, but I can, knock your head off in an instant with a knee or a kick, and I'll put you to sleep. But I just think, like, they're building him up and building him up and building him up. A loss here, even though it hurts Riddle, I think it would hurt Balor more to get the loss here, and he has to win. So my pick is for Finn Balor to go over and beat Matt Riddle here, and then eventually, like I said, challenge for the NXT Championship early in the year. Maybe they do it at a WrestleMania, considering the fact that they have NXT on the pay-per-view for Survivor Series. Maybe you get the NXT Championship defended at WrestleMania and Balor challenging whoever the champion is at that time. I could definitely see that taking place. And that's why I'm going to go with Balor to get the win here. Now let's go to the Women's War Games match. We have Team Rhea Ripley with Ripley, Candice LeRae, Tegan Nox, and Mia Yim versus Shayna Baszler, Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, and the NXT UK Women's Champion, Kay Lee Ray. This should be fantastic. I mean, Rhea Ripley, Candice LeRae, Mia Yim, Tegan Nox, those are all good performers. Shayna Baszler, Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, Kay Lee Ray, amazing. I haven't seen much of Kay Lee Ray up until her recent, show up on the main NXT brand. I don't really watch NXT UK. I'll always catch the takeovers. I think the takeovers for NXT UK have been amazing so far with what they've been able to do. I think that Tyler Bate and Walter had one of the best wrestling matches I've ever seen. I believe it went almost an hour and just was really just a great storytelling match. If you have not watched it, even though it's a long match, go out of your way to see it, because they put on one of the most beautiful professional wrestling matches you'll ever see in the sport. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to go deep into that match because that was in the past, but please go out of your way and watch Tyler Bate versus Walter for the NXT UK Championship. But yeah, the way I see this match going is I think Rhea, man, I don't know. Because Shayna Baszler, obviously the NXT Women's Champion. You've got the newly heel Io Shirai, who's done a really amazing job as a heel with the heel persona, and her new entrance and the lighting and just everything really mixes well with Io Shirai being a heel. Bianca Belair has kind of fallen off in recent, months. She's not as big as she once felt. And I think it's due to the multiple losses to Shayna Baszler. I think she had multiple matches with Shayna. If I'm wrong, then correct me. But just the losses to Shayna, it just really knocked off her steam as a competitor. And I think Kay Lee Ray is going to be a breath of fresh air in this match. Not too many people have been exposed to her on the NXT UK brand. And I think that the NXT audience is going to really embrace Kay Lee Ray. What I saw from her on this past NXT episode was great. I think with her match against Dakota Kai, she looked really good in that match. But when I got to pick a winner here, I'm going to go with Team Ripley to get the win in War Games. And I think Rhea is going to be the one to get the pin. I think this match is really going to be built to showcase Rhea Ripley as a force and somebody who's going to rip that NXT Women's Championship right out of the hands of Shayna Baszler. I think Rhea Ripley's definitely going to take the title off Baszler. Maybe at the NXT TakeOver on Rumble weekend, I think we're going to get Baszler versus Rhea Ripley. And I think, like I said, Ripley's going to take that title. So I could see really just this match is going to be great. They're going to have some great spots. I could see Shirai hitting a moonsault, maybe off a ladder from one ring to the other in the War Games match. But I just think this match is going to be built as Rhea Ripley really carrying her team to victory and ending up getting the win, and then I'm going to say that the finishing sequence, Rhea Ripley's going to pin Shayna Baszler. You got to have her pin Shayna, and then you build up to the match versus Shayna for the NXT Women's Championship. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Team Ripley to win the first ever Women's War Games match. We're going to move on to the second part of this podcast to break down the men's War Games match and then move into Survivor Series. I just don't want it to cut off as I'm in the middle of explaining. So, yeah, I'll catch you on the second part, guys. So we'll see you on the second part of episode 53 of the Touch 'Em Up podcast.